Welcome to the second talk. I'm delighted to have two people I really, really like. Hey, Maestro Perry So from the New Haven Symphony Orchestra, and hey, Dr. Albert Lee. Nice to see you again.
Good to be
Hi,
back.
Babs. Thanks so much for having us. It's great to see you.
I love having y'all, and happy Black History Month.
Happy
Indeed,
History Month.
indeed.
So this is a big, big production, The Ordering of Moses. Like this thing is massive.
It's pretty big. It's large orchestra, like with harp and like lots of percussion. There are chains over at the beginning of in the percussion section. There's a huge organ. We're going to use the Woolsey Hall organ. And of course, a humongous chorus. I think we're up to like 200 people in the chorus and four fantastic soloists,
Oh my
of which
gosh.
Albert is one.
I saw that. I was reading that. I was like, so Dr. Aberley, you've been on a couple of times, and I'm always asking you, how do you choose the pieces you want to sing, and how do you get, how do you say yes to things? What was it about Ordering of Moses? And you are Moses in this thing. What was it about this that got you saying, you know what, I'll take this on?
So there's something about this particular work that speaks to sort of maybe every part of my sort of musical being. The use of spirituals, excuse me, the use of spirituals in this particular work harken back to my own musical upbringing at St. Paul UAME Church on the corner of Chapel and Dwight, right here in New Haven, where the church choir sang a mix of anthems and gospel music and chant, as well as spiritual arrangements as I was growing up. It gets to the studies that I have done over the years in classical voice and understanding how to project and how to produce tone properly. It gets to my reverence for history and my reverence for the place and space of Blackness in Western classical music, and that our Nathaniel Dett has. It gets to sort of my own creative energy of listening to what he created with really innovative and very special orchestration. The first time Maestro So just mentioned the chains that are a part of the percussion. The first time I ever listened to the work and heard the chains, it was really chilling for me. And I'm nervous, but I am excited about sharing this particular work with my hometown, in an iconic hall in my hometown, right on the campus where I work.
hmm So Maestro, how did you find this work? Because this is another one of these obscure pieces that was crafted in 1937. I was reading the background. It was on the radio, and white folks got mad and didn't want to hear it, and then it just sort of fell
Yeah,
away.
they cut off the broadcast like 20 minutes into the piece, which is like an hour long piece. It matters so much, kind of the first couple of times a piece is performed, and this amazing work unfortunately didn't have the benefit of a world that was receptive to it. But Babs, I remember you and I talking about this some months back, and this is a completely new discovery for me. I took on this position in the New Haven Symphony, and I thought, you know what, let's find some great American oratorios. And so I was digging around, and I knew some of Dett's spiritual arrangements, but I did not know that he had written a whole oratorio. I mean, I thought of him as mostly as a composer of spirituals for unaccompanied choir or with piano or with organ. Um, and this, like, I think it speaks so clearly to the blindness that those of us who are educated in the traditional kind of Western classical music world have to some of this amazing repertoire that has been you know kind of banned from the mainstream for many reasons. I mean, this happened in Central Europe with Jewish repertoire as well during the middle of the 20th century. But I mean, the shame and really the misfortune for generations who didn't get to hear this piece, because I really I'm studying it intensely right now. I've never done it before, and the more I dig into it, the more I think this is, for me, one of the cornerstones of American classical repertoire, and the shame and the sadness that this has not been a central part of our musical lives since 1937. It was performed at Carnegie, I think, on a special occasion sometime back in the 60s. And then it wasn't performed at Carnegie again until, I believe, 2012. Can you believe that? You can imagine that for any piece by, Bernstein or Copland or any one of the, the established American composers. And, so what we're trying to do here is, and Babs, you reminded me when we talked about this a couple of months ago that this piece had a little bit of a life at, HBCUs, in community choruses, in churches. But there's no reason it shouldn't have been at Carnegie Hall in 1939, it's not by musical merit that it wasn't there. And so what I feel like we're trying to do in a small way here in New Haven is to say, hey, we need to redress these wrongs about the way that the canon was constructed in this country. And so this is our small attempt at putting this piece where I personally, and I think Dr. Lee probably agrees with me, where we think this piece belongs, which is at the center of our concert life.
So is it meant to be a big piece, Dr. Lee? Like, Maestro, so is it supposed to be a big 200 voice, big orchestra thing?
My sense of what Dett wrote is exactly what we are about to put together. I don't, every small city the size of New Haven doesn't necessarily have the forces to put it on in this fashion. It just so happens we have a community that enjoys collaboration, and several different organizations are coming together to make this happen. I find that because of Dett's orchestration and his vocal writing, that the keenness of what he does makes this sort of operatic in scope. It is dramatic in scope. And so I just think it is also accessible for people who maybe not listen to classical music regularly. You will hear tunes, you will hear spiritual tunes in the music that will be familiar, so that the music that is unfamiliar, that connects the story and tells the story, there's a mix of old and new in a way that really hopefully allows a listener to really take advantage of what's in front of them, what they hear, and what they see.
And so you've got all these folks coming together. You've got the New Haven Heritage Chorale. You've got the New Haven Chorale. You got the Fairfield folks come. Like, how did you decide who could? How did you decide the invitation of the voices?
When I came to New Haven, I just started talking to as many people as I possibly could. And, I would float different ideas of projects that I really wanted to do. This was the one where everyone said, yes, you've got to do this, and we will do it with you. We will support you. We will make this happen. And the groundswell of support for bringing this piece to New Haven has been just immense. And I remember a conversation I had with Dr. Lee about this, that, I had never done it. And so I asked him how his experiences were with it, and just the excitement that we both felt about the opportunity to bring this to New Haven is just immense. I would also add to what Dr. Lee said, that we cannot forget that Dett had the same top class musical education as people from Copland to Bernstein to Gershwin to Samuel Barber. He went to France to study with Nadia Boulanger. His skills are second to none. And so the grand operatic, the grand oratorio aspect of this, the fact that Dett is able to marshal these forces in this way that both pays a lot of tribute to a lot of the music that was happening around him in the 20th century, but also he has found this unique way to bring together the African-American spiritual into this context of a kind of European framework of this operatic oratorio with this gigantic orchestra and organ is really breathtaking. The skill and the imagination in this piece are wonderful. I think our audiences will just be, you know, they'll be swept off their feet. It's an amazingly beautiful work.
Hmm. And so, Dr. Lee, do you know this piece specifically? Like, have you
I
sung some of this?
I do. I've actually performed this twice before. The first time in Vermont, maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and then in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago. So this is a remount for me, but as we mature, as voices mature, my voice is a little different than what it was the first time I did it, and so the last couple of weeks have been about sort of testing out where my voice is now, and also reimagining how I might declare certain lines, knowing a little bit more. It's also not lost on me the moment we find ourselves
I
in
was going to bring that up.
where
You're ahead of me, Dr. Lee, because I certainly was going to bring that up.
listen, my fault, but people are feeling the fragility of freedom in this moment, and I hope that this performance will reinvigorate our demand for freedom. I think very, very often in American society that we have not wanted to admit that freedom for all will always run through the most oppressed, and until the most oppressed are free, none of us are free. I think the fear that we are seeing people sort of rely on, the fear of the outsider, the fear of immigrants, the fear of trans people, that is a fear that happens when people are not free. When people are not free to love, when people are not free to think, where people are not free to connect except through those stereotypes and through those fears. And so my hope is that we will remember our past failings, that we will remember our past sins, that we'll remember our past glory, the fight that we have always had, the perseverance that we have always had. That we'll remember those things and push through.
Mm. Maestro, so you couldn't have known we would be in this moment when you started this conversation, because I know you didn't wake up yesterday and say, let me pull this together. This had to be months in the making, discussions way, way, way before election time and all of that. So, I mean, how are you feeling about putting this piece right in this moment?
Well, I'll say when we started designing the program, of course, one always tries to live with hope, but we're to be realistic, we're always, the possibility of failure and the possibility of moving backwards is always there. And my hope, my fervent hope, was that this would be a celebration. But one thing that we tried to do when we constructed the program was to say, okay, what is the context in which we really want our audiences to hear this piece? There's, of course, the political context, but I think there's also a historical, cultural context that's really important. And it's, for our collaborators, and especially Jonathan Berryman, who's the music director of the New Haven Heritage Chorale. We were talking in great depth about this with Nathaniel Gums, who's the organ professor at Yale. How do we hear this piece, regardless of what the political situation is? And one of the conclusions that we came to, and I learned so much during this conversation, was that we have to situate it in this kind of long journey of music that deals with oppression and freedom and the vicissitudes, the ups and downs, the fact that it's a Sisyphean task. You move 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, sometimes 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And maybe the latter is kind of where we find ourselves today. But we've surrounded the piece with other cries for freedom that inform the way that I think we can think about the role that music can play in a moment like this. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Gums is playing some music by Florence Price on the
Yes.
organ, the finale from the first sonata.
Hmm.
The first not only African American woman, but one of the first women to have had her pieces performed by major symphony orchestras around this country. And he's also performing an organ voluntary on "Go Down Moses" by Fela Sawande. And the mass choruses will sing "We Shall Overcome" and "Lift Every Voice and Sing," reminding us that concert music is not divorced from the world. Concert music does not stand at some kind of privileged, high point, away from the floodwaters. That this music is all in a very, very intimate and important way tied together to each other. And of course, the first great spiritual that we hear in the Order of Moses is "Go Down Moses." And we're also going to tell the story a little bit of how "Go Down Moses" started as a song on the plantations and became this kind of through line of the African American concert music tradition. That these themes that go deep back into our history have everlasting resonance in the way that we make music today.
It feels. Go ahead, Dr. Lee. Go right ahead.
I was just thinking of something. I think there's a real opportunity in this performance on Sunday and the performance of this particular work. I think what is so peculiar about what Dett puts together is we don't actually hear from Moses until 41 pages into the work. He says not a word. And the first thing he says is, "Lord, who am I to go unto Pharaoh?" And there is something I think about leadership and what we require of leadership and how we see leaders. And right now we're seeing sort of, a bit of bombast or a lot of bombast and chaos and chest thumping. But there is something about real leadership that is humble. There is something about real leadership that is always questioning the call, never sure that they themselves could possibly be the one that God could call for a task as monumental as this. And so I think my hope is that we would all see ourselves in this moment as responsible for this present moment and responsible for the correction that needs to happen for us to move forward.
I like that because I read somewhere that Dr. King was always questioning, should he be the one leading this movement? Like the movement was necessary, but always like, should I, I'm 23 years old or whatever, 26 or whatever it is he was, at the forefront of this, but as we say in Black church, when God has a call on your life,
What we say, this is what we say.
when God has a call on your life, who are you not to answer? Because he's gonna keep calling you until you do answer.
Well, I think as musicians we have, and I wonder where Dr. Lee stands on this. I mean, we have a very unique position because we, along with pastors and parishioners, we're one of the few public spaces left where people come to feel and breathe and experience spiritual awakening together. And what do we do with this moment where these public spaces are dwindling? And I mean, as musicians, we don't speak in direct ideas. There's a lot of room for interpretation, but at the same time, music is the most exact of the arts in that we can pin an emotion down and we can pin a moment down in a way that very few other art forms can rival. And so, given this huge responsibility with this incredible art form and these dwindling public spaces, one of the things that I hope to do is to put music before, our fellow citizens and our and our fellow non-citizens as well, that remind us that the stakes are high and that we can come together. It's well, I don't know that I have a vision of where this performance ends up, But the fact that people will come, and the fact that people will come and breathe together and hear together and feel together, is a beginning. And if we don't begin, then we never go anywhere. So part of the journey for the New Haven Symphony as well is to use this incredible art form to be able to tell some of these stories. And I know Dr. Lee does that in his work. And of course, one of the central parts of what we must do at this moment is to teach and to share. And this is what we're hoping to do.
I love the fact that this piece is decidedly about freedom, and it's not hidden in a spiritual way, but I think a lot of people can hear a freedom message and a freedom story and believe that it's not political, but it is very political. Moses was very political. But they can hear it. I mean, I think people can hear this music and understand that freedom is necessary, and freedom is for us to keep fighting for. The same way that Moses kept fighting to free folks, out of Egypt. I mean, it's the same story.
The questions I think we all have to ask ourselves is this: if I have to put you in chains for me to be free, am I really free? If I need you under my foot for me to feel safe, am I really safe? Am I really free? And so I think we need to be thinking about a wholesale reimagination of what freedom is for all of us. And I think oftentimes in our society, we think of freedom as more capital, to be able to buy more things and to have more power in this system. But all of a sudden, what you find out is that just becomes another yoke of bondage in its own way. And so my hope is that people will come away from this thinking. I will tell you, it feels like a monumental task in this moment. One of my performances right just after the election in November, I sang a Beethoven Ninth that was paired with the Margaret Bonds Montgomery variations, and it felt so sort of strange to be singing that work sort of about joy when there was such a sense of concern and uncertainty from so many people. But the bookend to that is this for me, and to be in this moment and to have this work to sort of sink my teeth into it, to feels very right, but also feels very overwhelming. And so I will be spending the next few days trying to get my head together and get my faculties together, so I'm ready to be a vessel for this music, and hopefully for the movement that is stirring in all of us.
And Maestro, so I was in the audience when you kicked off the season, and that was a very, very, very joyous. I mean, everything about it was celebratory. That's a lot. I mean, that's a whole
It was just
vibe.
2 months ago. We were in a different place, and I mean, what we asked the audience to do was to choose joy, and that's much harder to do right now. At the same time, I don't want to ask the audience not to choose joy. Right? I mean, the choice in a limited but still, I think, very, very important way, the choice is ours. How to confront the moment. And one can confront the moment by remaining silent. And as musicians, we can't do that. We have to sing. So what do we sing at this moment? We should sing songs of freedom. We should also sing songs of joy, that we find joy in being together, in making music together, in sharing. And so I really hear Dr. Lee, and that this is a tough moment to revisit pieces like the Beethoven. But hopefully, as we build up our resistance together and our determination to continue and to renew the work of making a better world together, that we will find occasion to sing that, to remind ourselves that such a thing is possible, that not all is lost, and even when we've reached the other shore, we should be still singing the Ordering of Moses to remember what we've been through, right? So in a way, our emotional history together and our emotional journey together is dotted with many repetitions of often the same pieces and the same messages, but they carry such different, power and different resonances at different times in our lives together.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
I have to say,
Albert, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just to say I'm smiling because it's Black History Month, and the thing I love about being Black is Black folks have always chosen joy. We have faced all kinds of craziness, all sorts of terror, degradation, and anything imaginable. And we have found a way to press into joy. It has defied the odds, and I think it continues to anger our oppressors. And and what we're going to do is continue to smile and continue to choose joy, because you can't take that from someone.
So I know you've had opportunity, I'm sure, to talk to your other fellow musicians who are going to be singing with you and singing parts of this wonderful piece. How are they feeling? And do y'all talk about the heavy emotional lift that is required of this kind of music?
So I have started talking about this a little to musical friends. One of the other soloists and I, Kenneth Overton, have been friends. We've known each other. I won't say how many years, because it will tell you numbers about my own life that I don't necessarily need to make public. But um, thankful for good skin. Um, but one of the things that he always talks about, Kenneth has said several times, is we very often have to edutain audiences, and
Mm.
what he is really sharing is this idea of educating and entertaining both simultaneously. And that's really this as well, that we want to stir people's hearts, but we also want to provoke their thinking. And so um I'm working to be fully present and fully available to the moment to deliver. It is the work of the artist to sometimes get out of the way to be a conduit for the art. And I'm definitely working through that. This is my first time back in Woolsey since my mom passed away last July, and she would normally be right there with her Sunday church hat on, sitting too close for comfort for me. And she won't be there physically, but her spirit will be there and supporting and cheering me on and cheering the whole endeavor on. And so I'm trying to deal with all of that stuff so I can stand flat-footed and deliver.
Hmm. And so, Maestro, so how is it emotionally for you? How do you stand in all of this? Because you're a man of color. I mean, you are, and this is not necessarily a story, but it's your story. It's some of your story. Like it's some
There's
of this
certainly
has to
many
resonate.
resonance. Yes, I mean, if you think back to Chinese American experiences in this country, um, citizenship denied. I mean, it goes all the way back to the when the first Asians came over to these shores. Um, it's it's tough to say because there's a certain resistance to kind of seeing. I'll say this: we're a very disunited group, those of us from East Asia, and we've all experienced oppression and and even outright, you um yeah, I mean, in many different ways, but there's no single voice, unfortunately, for the experiences that Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans, in a very important way, they share some very similar experiences, but there's no singular voice. And that's where I really look to the leadership of Black artists who, I mean, as Dr. Lee said, you've always chosen joy, even in the hardest moments, in a way that I think sometimes I wish I had the strength to do that. And having the score in front of me and thinking about, when I meet the choir for the first time on Wednesday, how we're going to find the right sound to, this is not just normal kind of singing. This is a singing that has the weight of history upon it. And so what images, what ways of communicating with a choir that will be very diverse. I mean, there's Black folk, white folk, people who look like me, I mean, LGBTQ people. I mean, we, in a way, and I mean, this is, of course, so terribly sad, but I mean, we are all encountering this together. But that's where we have the opportunity to sing together, this incredible music that was left behind by, a great American. I mean, it in a way, that is what unites us, that we can take this repertoire and take this piece and all see something of ourselves in it. And when you're singing this music, it doesn't matter if you're white or Black or Asian or Native American. It tells a story that's universal. And I hope I'm finding the right ways into the piece where we can find the sound together that can tell this story in a way that doesn't just leave it as a historical relic, because part of bringing back music by people who are no longer around is that, I mean, we can misuse it, but we can also underestimate its power.
Mm-hmm.
And the important thing is to see this piece for what I really believe it is, which is a clarion call that will never be outdated, will never be something that's relegated to the past. Because I don't think, I mean, in the history of humanity, I don't think we'll ever be without oppression, without suffering. And this piece, I hope, will always be there at those moments when we need it.
Well, thank you so much, Maestro So and Dr. Lee. It is always a pleasure to talk to you too. And I cannot wait. This concert is Sunday, February 9th at Woolsey Hall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And people can come to this and still get home to see the game.
Absolutely. Please come and see a concert, then go to the Super Bowl party. You'll get there just in time for chips and dip.
That's it, just in time. And if you're around today at noon, I think the Beinecke is having a conversation about Nathaniel Dett's about this piece by Nathaniel Dett at the Beinecke, with the Mondays at the Beinecke. So I think that's a conversation that's happening this afternoon. So thank you.
And kids come free.
Oh, and kids come free. Kids come free. So thank you so much. I will be there with some folks. I can't wait. It'll be a pleasure. And I'm already moved by it. So thank you so much for your time this morning, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Babz, thank you so much.
I will see you all on Sunday.
See you then.
Thank you so much. All right. So if y'all want tickets, I don't know if they sold out. They might be sold out. Go to the new NHSO website and see about getting tickets. And they're reasonably priced, starting at $15. So get in there. Don't miss this. Do not miss it. So thank y'all. Have a good one. Thank you, Harry. All right, we're out, good people. Ooh.